Gentle parenting is toxic. There is no kind way to say it to you. It is toxic.
Eventually, our children will become teenagers. And the type of parenting styles we use their whole lives will help determine the type of people they surround themselves with and the type of people they will eventually date and theoretically become partnered with for life. So, if we teach our children that what they want doesn't matter, that they have to be obedient and submissive in certain situations, that teaches them that power struggles within any kind of relationship are normal. We don't want them to have friends who control them and put power over them. We want them to have internal motivation and control, which is what authoritarian parenting does. It creates internal motivation and control that the child, the person experiences through their whole life.
It causes misbehaving toddlers, unruly kids, and volatile teenagers.
This beautiful, intelligent woman is clearly confusing two of the parenting styles, so let's go over them together. What we have to do first is talk about what we want our children to grow up into, what we want our adult children to be like. As a parent, I want my children to be confident, with high self esteem, high self control. I want them to be open minded, easygoing, respectful, and I also want them to expect respect from partners and friends. Okay. How do we get here? Well, the first way to parent we're going to go over is permissive parenting. We do not get permissive parents teaching their children how to be these things. Okay. Permissive parents may be very absent from their children's lives. They also may be very present, but be very inactive with their actions. Maybe say a lot of words, but they are not active in trying to form a confident, respectful, easygoing, open minded person with high self control. Okay. The type of parenting that a lot of parents think is appropriate that also doesn't develop confident, respectful, easygoing, open minded human adults. It's called authoritarian. That is a lot like authoritarianism in government styles. It involves obedience, strictness, punishment, shame, blame, pain, control, and submission. You actually can't get a person who's easygoing and who expects respect from their partners and friends, someone who's confident with high self esteem. You don't get these things when the parents are authoritarian. These things don't teach a person how to be these things. Okay. This is how we teach children to be obedient adults, be strict adults. We teach our children to blame themselves and others instead of being responsible and confident. We teach them that pain is a way to manipulate other people to get what we want, and shame. So this is about manipulation on a fundamental level because you want control and submission. I don't want my children to feel controlled and be submissive because that doesn't equal confident, happy adult. Okay. This is all basic stuff in studies. Okay. So, how do we get adult children who are confident and respectful and awesome? We use authoritative, which is not to be confused with authoritarian. They're almost the same word, but they're different. Authoritative parenting involves nurturing, responsive, and supportive parents. We don't neglect the emotional side of it of our children because we are emotional beings. So we use discipline and firm boundaries. There's a bunch of tools that we learn. We use redirection, which is our main tool, right? And consequences to learn. So instead of punishment, we use redirection and consequences. We use talking through things and firm boundaries. I want to rebrand gentle parenting, which I think is poorly named because it's not technically gentle. It's just more gentle than authoritarian parenting. Okay. So conscious parenting is what I'm going to call authoritative parenting. Conscious parenting is where the adult works really hard to consciously parent and discipline with consequences and redirection using firm boundaries. This type of parenting is the goal. There's only three types. There's, to put it simply, there's being too nice and not having enough action. There's woo, there's being too strict and expecting submission and obedience. And there's responsive, supportive, nurturing parenting, which is the only real way to get happy, easygoing, respectful adult children. This stuff isn't magic. This doesn't happen overnight. Conscious parenting, authoritative parenting, is the hardest job that there is because you're literally dealing with other human beings who are doing age appropriate things that are not only frustrating, they can be annoying. If you're unsure what to make of this information, the easiest way to think about it for me is I think about the type of people I want my child to eventually date and befriend when they are growing into adulthood. Children, like all people, need a few inherent things on a consistent basis to feel like they are okay. Okay. Power and control over themselves and over some of their life is not only vital to their self-esteem, it's also I don't know how to put this. Basically, as you can see here, the authoritative parenting allows the children to have their natural sense of power and control over themselves and over their immediate life. Okay. We obviously, in this crazy world, we can't have our children have complete control and power, which is not the goal. The goal is to give them just enough to where they feel confident in their own abilities and confident in the world around them. The world is supposed to be easygoing and neutral and relatively stress-free for children. And authoritative parenting allows children to do age-appropriate things. It's important for children to know their place, to contribute meaningfully in the small ways that they can, depending on their age. Sometimes, obviously, the small ways that they can is referring to small children like toddlers. Toddlers can contribute meaningfully in small ways, and it compounds as they get older. You know, there's like 300 different things a person should know how to do by the time they turn 18. And authoritative parenting builds skills upon skills. Instead of expecting children to be submissive and obedient and just do what you're told, authoritative parenting lends itself to being a teacher-student relationship. We want our children to feel respected, valued, and loved. We want our children to have high self-control and high self-esteem. As my children grow, I expect them to choose friends, first and foremost, that reflect the values that they were given growing up. So they will make friends that don't want to exert their power and control over them, right? We don't want them to have friends who control them and put power over them. We want them to have internal motivation and control, which is what authoritarian parenting does. It creates internal motivation and control that the child, the person experiences through their whole life. Okay. We want them to know their place in the world, to feel comfortable in their own skin, and to feel comfortable in the environment of people that they experience. So we don't want power struggles to exist in our child's life, because power struggles show that they are seeking power over their own self, over their own life. We also don't want our children to accept manipulative behavior from their friends and their romantic partners and their bosses and stuff like that. We teach our children through authoritative parenting that they have internal power and control, that motivation is best when it's internal. So when parents are permissive, what does that cause? That causes self-centeredness, a lack of self-control, and it causes power struggles, right? So permissive parenting also causes children to learn to be manipulative, to gain power, and to gain attention. If we think about the way we want spouses to treat each other and partners to treat each other in romantic relationships, there's no part of it where we're like, yes, that one or both of them should be manipulative, or one or both of them should be obedient or submissive, and the other one should have power over the other one. Children who are mistreated don't grow to dislike their parents or their caregivers. They grow to dislike themselves because they believe that they are the problem, right? That's the underlying factor in this whole thing, is that the child is the problem, the child isn't right, therefore the child dislikes themselves, which causes anxiety and depression and struggles within the person themselves. Permissive parenting causes children to, like, be self-centered, with a lack of self-control, also with power struggles, also with manipulation. And permissive parenting often uses authoritarian parenting when they really need their child to listen. When they really want results, that's when they choose to be authoritarian and expect obedience, which is even more confusing for the children because usually their parents pay little to no attention to them or give little to no action in response to them. It might be a lot of words, it might be very little to no words, but the action isn't there. So overall, it's very permissive. When we are authoritative and use conscious parenting, we teach our children that the power and control that they need is there. They know their place within the, the society, within their family, within their friend group. They understand how to contribute meaningfully because they grew up contributing to their family in multiple ways. Authoritative parenting involves being respected, valued, and loved. And those children grow up expecting their friends and partners to be respectful, valuing, and loving. Those children also grow up to have high self-control and self-esteem, which protects them from damaging people. When I think about my child being offered drugs and alcohol, I think about where her sense of control is and her sense of power is. At the end of the day, the goal would be to have our children not to be manipulative themselves and not to be able to be manipulated by others. Because my children are not ever manipulated into doing things or coerced we highly value internal motivation. Obviously, in life, we have to do things because of external motivation, but it's about teaching them to take external motivation and figure out ways to create internal motivation, which is the real reason why anyone does anything of importance and of gravity. It's because they were internally motivated. So everything that I'm saying is backed by science, is backed by studies. Luckily, we've been able to do a lot of longitudinal studies, which are done over time, longitudinal. Please like this video and let me know in the comments what kind of parenting you were raised with, and if you're a parent, what kind of parenting style you use. This is going to take some critical thinking about, I feel like most parents use a mix of the three types depending on what is going on. It takes so much mental effort. That's why it's called conscious parenting, to be authoritative and to completely put yourself and your ego and your own childhood to the side so that you can not be reactive. It's about not being reactive to children and always choosing to do what's best for them, which is insanely hard when so much of what happens in the world is triggering. Studies show that hitting your children in any way teaches them that hitting is not only appropriate, it's useful. So, this is why boys grow up into men who hit their wives. The odds of them being hit as a child are so high. It's pretty ridiculous that people still think it's appropriate to hit their children. It is never appropriate. It is disgusting. And if you aren't really sure about what's going on with that, look it up. What it comes down to is if a person really believes that their parenting is better than authoritative parenting, if they think conscious parenting is stupid, then that person is not on the side of science. Science specifically states that this is the best kind of parenting, that the other two types of parenting suck. The science is very obvious. Studies are very consistent. The scientific community is very sure about what type of parenting is the best type of parenting. Okay. And I just want people to educate themselves about what conscious parenting looks like and what it feels like and what it is. Because a lot of what people think is gentle parenting is just permissive parenting, and it's not appropriate. We're separating ourselves from that. Okay, so I am almost 37 and I'm a parent, and I have 2 degrees directly related to parenting and to psychology. My first degree is in psychology. And my minor was in childhood studies. And I I really want to find the humans who want help, who want a guiding person to help them in whatever way that they need. You need reassurance, or you need advice, or you just want someone to vent to. I'm hoping to be that person for whoever needs it. I'm hoping this invitation helps people connect with me and become my friend. And I I don't want your money. It's all free. It's all friendly and loving in nature. So I'm hoping some people take me up on this. That's my cat. I don't know if you can hear it. If this video, for some reason, brought up stuff about your own childhood and you want to talk to me about it, that's cool too. I had to, if it's not obvious, I had to reparent myself to grow to be the person that I am, the parent that I am, because my parents switched between being permissive and authoritarian, where it was very much um, my childhood was scary and alarming and unsafe in so many ways, and I grew up hating myself. I don't know if you can tell, but I kind of have this joke inside my head where my haters are going to hate me or whatever, and the people that I used to be friends with are going to have their opinions about me, but no one will ever hate me as much as I hate myself. So that's what authoritarian parenting does for a person. It makes them hate themselves, and it makes them have depression and anxiety. The funny thing is when men see women complain about men, they say, "Well, who hurt you?" I've been asked that very recently. "Well, who hurt you?" It's like, "Girl, my dad did. My dad was a horrible, horrible human being. And he's probably walking around this earth somewhere being a terrible excuse for a human being." I just feel sorry for people who are so stuck in their ways that they, even after like listening to this or partially listening to this, they still are stuck on their ideas, and they're like annoyed at the whole concept of me talking right now. And to that I say, I do believe, I don't know how to say this. I do believe that people who disagree with me about certain things, about a lot of the things that I have put so much time and effort and thought, I'm a very thoughtful person. If people still disagree with me, it's not one of those agree to disagree because it's basic human value and acceptance and the op- the opposite the opposite of manipulation. It's about inclusivity and everyone having a place. I do believe that when humans disagree with me, that there are shortcomings in their brain that need to be addressed. I have people who told me that authoritative parenting, which very obviously has all the studies to back up, and it's not even funny how good the parenting is. Like it's just chef's kiss. So good when it's done right. It's one thing that non-parents need to realize, to internalize, to fully grasp is that children will always do annoying things, unwanted things, because that's age appropriate. Okay? I'm saying children will always find ways to do age appropriate things that adults don't want them to do. That doesn't mean that they're not age appropriate. If we take off the word age, we say that they're appropriate, age appropriate, which means we don't get upset when our 2-year-old, let's say, throws a tantrum, which I must admit, before I had children, I used to think that children who had good parents did not throw tantrums. Now that I'm older and wiser and have much more experience with children, I understand that a tantrum is a, a mental breakdown from normalcy. That child is so incapable of dealing with what's going on at the moment that they lose it. They are no longer able to function. They can't talk properly. They can't stand up properly. They can't do anything properly. And yes, obviously, some tantrums are used in an effort to manipulate. I'm not saying that tantrums are like the best thing ever and we should be excited that our children are having them. We need to realize that they are a sign that that child's needs are not being met. There's some fundamental things going on within the child's brain and body that need to be addressed. So if a child's needs aren't being met, if they're tired, if they're hungry, if they're experiencing overstimulation within their bodies or brains or their five senses, it takes a lot for a child to get to the point, for any person to get to the point where they have a tantrum. And when the caregivers don't meet the child's needs and the child's needs become ignored enough, that's when a child's going to have a tantrum. All this being said, tantrums are not only appropriate for young children, they are simply signs that the child's needs aren't being met and that something drastically needs to change for that child to be okay again. We as caregivers cannot expect obedience and submission from children when they are no longer using the logical part of their brain. When a tantrum's happening or something similar, they're in the back part of their brain, which is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So there are two types of consequences. There's natural consequences and logical consequences. And there will be another video that I make about those. Bagel. Bagel. So you made it to the end. Hi. Please comment what you grew up with, your parenting you grew up with, and if you would like to use me as a resource, you can email me at the Twizzl at twizzleindustries.com or at the Twizzl@gmail.com, or you can just message me or comment and I will PM you. There's lots of ways to reach me,